In the next lesson, we're going to learn about angles that you have learned in the past. So you can print this out or you can just handwrite the notes. Please make a chart that says vocabulary, example, and keywords or phrases to help you out. So the first one is the vertical angles, adjacent angles, supplementary angles, complementary angles, and linear pair. We will be talking about that in the next video. All right, guys, you should have your notes already printed out or you're going to handwrite your notes. These are the vocabulary words that you want to write down. The first one is adjacent, vertical, linear pair, supplementary, and complementary angles. All right, let's start with the first vocabulary. You want to write this down and actually write an example to help you out. Adjacent angles are side by side, and they share a common ray. So they usually have a vertex here, and then there is an array there. These are examples of adjacent angles. So if you take a look here, notice that adjacent means that they are right next to each other and they lie on a ray. Here's another example. This one's 80 degrees, 45 degrees. This is adjacent, it's right next to each other, and they share the same array. So check out the colors there. Here's 85 degrees and 20 degrees, and it's an array that they share, so they are adjacent. It's like sitting next to someone right next to each other. Now, these are not adjacent angles. So this one is not adjacent because they don't share the same ray. This one is not adjacent because they're not right next to each other. And this example here is not adjacent because they are on opposite sides there. So they're not adjacent. Now, when two lines intersect, they make vertical angles. So you see here's two lines and they intersect and they create vertical angles. So let's go ahead and go into more detail. Vertical angles are opposite of one another and they are congruent. So make sure you write this down as well. They're also congruent, meaning they will share the same angle. For example, vertical angles are congruent because this angle is vertical to this angle, and notice that the numbers are the same. Congruent angles, meaning it's the same angles. Please make sure to write down the definition for this one. Vertical angles are opposite of one another, and they are, what's the word? Congruent. Meaning they have the same angle. Vertical angles are congruent and they are equal. So these angles are congruent and they are equal. So that one's congruent, they are vertical angles, and this one are congruent angles. Now, supplementary angles add up to 180. Please make sure you write this down. Supplementary angles add up to 180. Now, supplementary angles can be adjacent. Example over here, you can see that these set of angles are supplementary. Not only are they supplementary, they're also adjacent. Okay, now these ones are supplementary, but they're not adjacent, meaning if you add the two together, you add the angles together, it's going to be equal to 180. So we're going to do that. So we have 120 plus 60. We add them together, it equals to 180. Please make sure you write this down. Now, these are 40 plus 140 also gives you 180. So supplementary angles add up to 180. Now, complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. And so let's take a look at this example here. So they can be adjacent to each other. just like this one. So this is adjacent and complementary. So if I had 30 plus 60, that equals to 90. You check it out. In this sense, this is actually a right angle as well. You see that? It creates a right angle. Now, complementary angles can also be non-adjacent, meaning they're just two separate angles added together. So if I add them, 40 plus 50 also gives me 90. So even though they're not adjacent, it's still complementary because when you add the angles, it equals to 90. Now, linear pair is special. Okay, linear pairs are two angles that will form a linear pair if they are adjacent and together they form a line. They will also be supplementary angles, and the sum of their measures is equal to 180. So the only time where we call it a linear pair is if it's adjacent. So here that's adjacent. And if you add these two angles together, it will be equal to 180. So A plus B equals 180. Here is an example. So when you see a line and they share two angles, you kind of see that it kind of makes like a half circle. You see that? Half of a circle, which is equal to 180. All right, these are not linear pairs. So here we have 130 and 50. So they're not linear pairs because they don't share the same, they're not adjacent and they don't share the same line there. So that's why it's not linear pair, but it is supplementary. So remember, it's supplementary because you can add it together and still get 180. So it's supplementary, but not linear pair. Here is an example of not a linear pair. They are adjacent, but they don't form a line, and they are not supplementary. We add them together. That gives me 195. This one here is adjacent, but don't form a line and not supplementary. So they are adjacent, but they don't equal to 180. Doesn't equal to 180. Now that we are done taking our notes, the next couple of slides will check your understanding of the lesson. You will see multiple choice questions, matching, and check for understanding, like you're going to check all the definitions that match the problem. And there will be some extra practice there. Please remember that at the end of your Desmos, there's going to be a section where you're going to upload your notes. So you need to make sure that you take a picture of your notes and upload it to the Desmos. If you do not know how to do this, I sent out a message last week and the week before that on how to upload a picture and how to upload or take a picture of your notes. Please make sure that you do that. Let's say if you didn't finish that, you need to go back on this video and complete your notes before you move on to the next section.